Hey folks, I'm best-selling author of The Power Zero, David McKnight. In today's video, you'll see part one of my conversation with financial advisor Bruce Hostler, in which we discuss how the exploding national debt could end up killing your retirement plan.
I am so excited today to have and introduce David McKnight, the author of The Power of Zero. I have been a follower of David for years. His work is truly leadership in this area. And David, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, Bruce. It's an honor to be on with you.
Great. So I have so many questions, but we only have so much time. But David, it's been 10 years now since you've written your best-selling book, The Power of Zero. And I think our listeners would be interested in hearing what things of note have transpired in those 10 years, including, be sure and include something about your movie, The Power of Zero, because what a thing that is.
Sure. Let me sort of put the fiscal trajectory of our nation in perspective. I want to go back to 1999 when Bill Clinton stood before the nation in the State of the Union. He said, hey, look, I've got great news. We've got budget surpluses. There's about $5 trillion of debt back then. He said, we got budget surpluses for like the next 23 years. Okay, so if we just keep on the same path, the debt should remain at about $5 trillion. So fast forward to 2014, and lo and behold, the debt did not stay at $5 trillion. Right. In fact, it rose precipitously because of unfunded wars, because of an unfunded prescription drug program that was an $8 trillion unfunded liability. And then, between COVID and more wars and bailouts and TARP and things like that, we now are to the point where in 2024, we have $34 trillion of debt. And back in about 2010, a very important person, former Comptroller General of the federal government, David Walker, he was raising the warning cry about the fiscal trajectory of our nation. And he wasn't even anticipating all of the spending for the things that ultimately contributed to the debt. He was worried about three things: Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He said there is a huge unfunded obligation for those programs alone. So what has happened since 2010 and ultimately 2014, when I wrote The Power of Zero, is the debt has multiplied on orders of magnitude, right? Yes. And so we are now at a point where we have $34 trillion of debt. We're calculated to have $2 trillion on average of debt per year for the next 10 years. We'll have $54 trillion of debt by 2033. And that doesn't include any of the problems that David Walker originally warned us about. We still have a $200 trillion plus fiscal hole in our economic outlook due to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And so what's happened is really the country has just spent with reckless abandon, and they have failed to shore up the single greatest, the single greatest shortfall in our country's economic trajectory over the next 75 years, and that's the unfunded obligation for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I think if you ask David Walker, he'd say, wow, I never dreamed that the problem would be so much worse in 2024 than it was back in 2010, and we still haven't put any fixes in place. And so when we talk about the trajectory of the debt, it's only going to get worse from here on out as we think about what we need to do. You and I have talked about
and you haven't even mentioned inflation causing the higher interest rates that we're going through right now, and the interest rates that we're having to pay on that debt, David, as it renews and rolls over.
Right. Yeah. So the national debt is these are short-term loans that other countries give to us, and they have short renewal rates, which means that every couple of years we have to refinance them. And when we refinance all that debt, we do it under the higher interest rates. And so if all interest rates did was stay at historically normal levels like they are right now, the cost of servicing that debt, once all of that debt gets renewed under the current interest rates, could double, triple, or even quadruple. So we're fast approaching this point where the national debt is going to consume a greater and greater portion of the national budget, or at least servicing the national debt, which means that our country is going to need huge infusions of cash, huge sources of new revenue in the very near future to be able to just pay for all the interest on that debt let alone just the cost of running the federal government, parks, programs for needy individuals, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. It's just the problems are compounding as we move forward in time.
So what do you see as you look forward over the next 10 years? Here we are in 2024. What can our listeners expect to happen over this next 10 years, David? I'm very concerned.
Yeah, I think that you're rightfully concerned, Bruce. I think that they can anticipate that the national debt will continue to grow in an unrestrained sort of a way. I think that what we need to worry about is not so much how much debt we owe, it's the debt to GDP ratio. Experts have warned that when we get to the point where we have about 175% debt to GDP, and that's slated to happen in about 2043, that no combination of increasing taxes or cutting spending will arrest the financial collapse of our country. In other words, the debt will be so massive and the cost of servicing will be so massive that it doesn't matter what we do, we will have passed the point of no return at that point, and we will already have sort of entered into that death spiral from which there's no deliverance. So there's some. I mean, this is a study by Penn Wharton, right? These are not financial neophytes that are predicting this. So it's going to get pretty grim, and politicians aren't all that interested in making the tough decisions to right the fiscal ship of state.
Oh no, they're not talking about that at all. However, it does seem to me in just the last 6 months that there have been many more voices, and when I say voices, I mean people of significance. Like Ray Dalio was telling the Wall Street Journal that the U.S. is courting a debt crisis and that the national debt will explode to more than $52 trillion in 2033, less than 10 years. What are you seeing? Are you hearing these other voices coming up and talking about this national debt? Are you seeing that as a leader in this space?
Yeah, it used to be that people would call me and David Walker and others that have been voicing these concerns, they would call us inflammatory and polarizing and fear-mongering. But you're starting to see that more and more of those people are coming over into our camp because the math doesn't lie. You can only have so much debt, and you can only afford to service so much debt before it starts to put a major crimp in your economic growth. And you'll get to the point where you just can't print your way out of these problems. You're going to need huge infusions of new revenue. And most of the experts that I follow on this are predicting that tax rates will have to rise precipitously in the next 10 years to be able to afford the cost of servicing all this debt. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the prophecies that David Walker made back in 2010 are being realized even as we speak, and it only gets worse from here on out.
So in my new book coming out at the end of the month here in March, Moving to Tax-Free, I discuss how tax planning is such a challenge today because tax professionals are so busy preparing taxes that they don't have time to do tax planning. And a lot of financial advisors, they're not really prepared to provide that tax planning, even though there's some new software coming out helping that. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in this area of the industry today, trying to help people get ahead of the 0% tax bracket by putting a tax plan together so they can make that Roth conversion and they can move to tax-free life insurance retirement plans? What are you seeing that's going on in the industry today?
Yeah, basically what I've seen is that there's three basic types of financial advisors who are trying to grapple with this type of planning. The first, and only one of them really can do a comprehensive job and help shepherd people through the process of mitigating against the impact of higher taxes. The first type of advisor is sort of like this product salesman who thinks that, for example, life insurance is the end-all, be-all, and it solves all of your problems. It's a magic bullet. So let's put all of our money into there. It's a very sort of, if all you ever have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and
they're just hitting everything they can with one hammer, right?
Yeah, it's just not very comprehensive, and frankly gives short shrift to a lot of the strategies that we talk about, you and I talk about day in and day out, that really can help solve this problem for a lot of Americans. The second type of advisor says, yeah, okay, I think I can entertain the idea of doing some tax-free strategies, but only if we're really, really convinced that your tax rate in retirement is going to be higher than they are today. In other words, are you going to have much more income in retirement than you do during your working years? And so in those scenarios, the Roth conversion and other tax-free solutions hardly ever come into play. And the third type of advisor says, look, I am willing to take a look at the lay of the land, the fiscal landscape of our country, and I can see that even 10 years from now, that tax rates are going to have to rise dramatically, even if your income remains exactly the same as it is today. Because of the fiscal, the unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, the rapidly mounting national debt, the federal government will have no choice but to raise taxes, and probably within the next 10 years. And so we are going to help our clients take advantage of every nook and cranny in the IRS tax code to help shield against those higher taxes down the road. And we're talking Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, Roth conversions, taking money out of our IRAs up to standard deductions, so that's tax-free. We talked about the life insurance retirement plan can play a role in that balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement. So that third type of advisor that says, look, let's look at every nook and cranny in the IRS tax code. Let's take a balanced, comprehensive approach, but let's be very futuristic. Let's be very proactive and recognize that there's a tax freight train looming off in the distance, and we need to do some things today to get our hard-earned retirement savings off the tracks.
So those advisors are actually believing that the tax rates are going to be higher in the future, whereas the other two are not really even considering that, right?
Yeah, they're just they think that, again, it's alarmist, it's inflammatory to they'll say we have no idea what tax rates are going to do in the future, that tax rates have a history of ebbing and flowing over time. I'm like, well, gosh, it's not very hard to read the handwriting on the wall here, because the national debt is such a predictable sort of a thing. And we can see that debt to GDP ratio creeping up consistently over time. And so we are trying to get a sense for the lay of the land and then to create strategies accordingly. Okay, folks, that was part one of my interview with financial advisor Bruce Hostler. In the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 100,000 Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davidmcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero Network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.